Good morning, everybody. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. Today we're going to focus on Obamacare or ACA penalties and how that can hurt you and how that can help you. So stay tuned and we'll be right back to cover that topic and more. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for the short intro. I was actually, I got distracted by some news, which is a lot of what we share on the show. Um, But again, big topic for today is going to be dealing with ACA penalties, which is a very real thing. And now was the perfect time to be concerned about it, to be aware of it, and how to report any changes in your income to avoid these nasty penalties. So we're going to take a that'll be the topic for the day. But we've got a lot of news to cover, and we're going to dive right into it. So first of all, interesting story here because there's plenty of stories. New York Times had a post, and then also Bloomberg, I believe, both calling out Republicans. How dare they do tax cuts? It's not just red states doing tax cuts, and that's the thing. Rising taxes, it hurts people no matter where you are. So before I saw those articles, I came across another article, and here this is Hawaii, deep blue Hawaii, helping people out with tax cuts. There's nothing wrong with this. So again, this just happened. Um, happened yesterday. Hawaii passed tax cuts across the board, the largest income tax cut in state history. And of course, you have some people complaining about it, saying, "Look, it's going to hurt. We can't spend as much on the social state, etc." But the biggest problem in Hawaii is that locals can't afford to live there. And that's, again, we're going to run into a recurring theme today, how if people that are renting, people that, are from an area, because of rental prices going through the roof, are struggling to meet expenses and to live in these areas. So, yeah, so it definitely cuts both ways. So they're trying to make Hawaii more affordable all around. So this is a huge part of his administration's plan. So he ran on this, and this is what they're trying to do. Again, the main problem is you have people fleeing the state, fleeing the Hawaiian Islands because they're just too expensive. Now, again, if you have too many people leave and it just becomes a super rich, super poor place, people are still going to go as tourists to go visit Hawaii. That's just going to happen. But what you don't want is to lose most of the people that work, live, have families, have history there. And so I get where they're coming from. So this is to reduce 70% of working class taxes for 70% of working class families, and eliminate the state income tax entirely for about 40% of all state taxpayers by 2031. So, and this is a quote from Governor Green of Hawaii. "These were changes that we had to have because we have seen an exodus of people who are living paycheck to paycheck. We've seen an exodus of those individuals going to the mainland, working families, because they just can't afford rent. Rent in Hawaii is through the roof. Property prices are through the roof in Hawaii. It's one of the most expensive states in the country. But yeah, the goal is to reduce tax burden for the average median income Hawaii family by $20,000 over the next 7 years. So that's spread out over 7 years, but that's still a couple $1,000s every year. We'll reduce state income tax collections by a total of 5.6 billion. So this is huge. This is a big deal. And the goal is to really help people and make Hawaii a more tax-friendly state. And they have a tax home pay calculator to help people figure out how much this is going to impact their bottom line. And it goes and explain how it's going to help people. If you're interested, go ahead and read through the article. And again, one of the biggest criticisms here is it provides large tax cuts to Hawaii's wealthiest residents, people who don't really need it. Again, they're trying not to cut services as a result of this, but at the same time, you have to balance. You can't have higher taxes forever, because you look at California, New York, and Hawaii is experiencing this as well. You have people, more and more people fleeing the state, can't afford to live there. And one of their arguments, which is a very conservative, I mean, this isn't Hawaii. You have a Democrat legislature, you have a Democrat governor, and he's saying, look, by passing this tax cut, they do expect the economy to grow and the tax base to increase overall. Those are all very conservative ideas, coming from Democrats. But that's okay. It doesn't matter what party you belong to, you is. Sorry. This should be about doing what's best for your people. And if this works for Hawaii, I applaud it. And if it works for other areas, good. If it doesn't work, they can reverse it. But let's give it a few years, see what happens, and you can make changes accordingly based on what, and this is why this is called the American experiment. People can make decisions, try something out, and again, we have this big difference between tourists coming in, people coming in and staying for a little bit, and that's a huge part of the Hawaiian economy. But the people there that live there, it's very easy to feel sympathetic to them. So our next article continues this theme. Renters and owners live separate economies. This is from the Epic Times. And this is an interesting article, really talking about how what the Fed has done, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter, has really created a real difference between people that have benefited between homeowners and renters. Now, typically homeowners are more prosperous, they have more assets, etc. But long term, renters aren't building wealth, whereas homeowners do. So this is why home ownership is historically a very good thing, should be encouraged. The problem is that it's getting harder and harder for people to afford homes in our economy and the way things are going. And the more chaos you throw in, the higher inflation eats away at people's incomes. It gets tougher and tougher. And right now, with interest rates being as high as they are, it's more expensive than ever to purchase homes. So it talks about financial distress among non-elderly adults. This is just normal population. Home ownership versus renters. So almost twice as many renters experiencing hardship, and then using alternative financial services. Again, it's double for renters than homeowners. Again, and this is a little simplistic. Of course, renters that can afford to purchase a home are struggling more financially. But part of that point is that the cheap pandemic money helped homeowners, helped people that could take advantage of changes in the laws, rather than those that couldn't still stayed renters. So, whenever the government messes with things, it usually benefits the wealthier, those that are better positioned to take advantage of it, rather than having consistency where people can plan and prepare for it. The more volatility you throw into a market, the harder it is for people to actually get into the market and improve their situation. One of the hallmarks of American society is social mobility. The idea that people can come in, work hard, do the things right, and then get ahead in society, get ahead in life. And too often this has been made a lot more difficult by all the money that the Federal Reserve has spent. So it's talking about how renters are in dire straits financially, while homeowners are continuing to reap the rewards of cheap pandemic money. So, and then also argues that homeowners are propping up prices because they're out spending money from travel to eating out, whereas renters are struggling a lot more. housing costs climbed during the pandemic where renters' income stagnated. So the difference is when you purchase a home, if it's been 10, 20 years, that mortgage gets smaller and smaller with time compared to overall costs. Whereas if you rents will continue to grow because you're paying someone else's mortgage. And typically they are going to continue to go up. So this is looking at median renter household income. It went down and only recently, it started to increase, but it's stagnated at 3.2%. However, the median rent has, was slowly going up in recent years. It's gone up dramatically. But even as far as 2017, it was up 10% and climbing. And so the housing issue that we have, a lot of them predate COVID, but they've been exacerbated by COVID. Because one of the things here, if you look at this from 2011, and really it started around 2000, prior to 2008, this is when we started having easy money policies by the Fed. So it was very easy to get cheap mortgages. Things exploded in 2008 and 9 because we created a bubble. Did we learn from it? No, we just doubled down on it. So now it's more and more expensive. Whereas people that have money, and again, this is a fairly populist article from the Epoch Times talking about how the rich are getting richer, the poor get inflation. Through by 7 trillion fresh dollars being printed and put into the economy. Just means there's more dollars out there, but the same amount of goods, which just drives the price of everything, drives inflation. So the more, and that's mainly done by the government just spending money. So it talks about overall economic outlook, and this is not by renters and non-renters. This is, they share a little story of people. A lot of the people doing well are the homeowners, the people that they got the 2 to 3% interest rate on their homes. However, so their mortgages are low, they're locked in. They're not dealing with the economic pain that most people are, with rents going up, with taxes going up, with property taxes going up. And there are some areas where they're going up and dramatically. So this isn't 100% true. So there are some people doing well in the economy with the stock market going up, but 90% aren't. They're losing purchasing power, and one of 5 renters fell behind on the rent in the last year, while rents have soared 20% since the pandemic started. So if you were able to get those super low rates while interest rate is low, great, good for you. But again, whenever things are artificially kept low, and we're out of time, so I'm going to have to come back to this. I spent more time on this than I planned. Welcome back, everybody. I want to wrap this article up. Main thing here, and this has been a little over the top here, having a top hill at the bottom, where a lot of people are thriving in this economy if they already have homes, if they already have investments in the market, if they're not living paycheck to paycheck. There are a lot of people that are actually doing well in this economy. Those that aren't, especially those that are renting, that can't afford to pay increased costs for electric, water, gas, utilities, and are paying the higher inflation rate, especially for housing, they're getting hammered here. So continuing with this theme, this is from Politico, and again, the leftist site, but same theme here. Same thing happening throughout the economy, be Hawaii, generally renters versus homeowners. And South Lake Tahoe is a very unique situation. So if you look at South Lake Tahoe, if you're not familiar with it, I've been there, it's beautiful. South Lake Tahoe area is absolutely beautiful, which is why it's a huge tourist destination. It's why there's plenty of second homes up there in the Tahoe area, Tahoe, Truckee, that whole area up in the high Sierras. It's absolutely beautiful. Surrounded by pines, beautiful weather, skiing in the wintertime, all kinds of play in the summer. Beautiful, beautiful lake. Problem is you can't build too much there because there's not a lot of space. It's mountains. And the building that they have done has created, has caused damage to the lake. When you disturb the soil too much, you've had more and more soil flowing into Lake Tahoe, and it's filling in. Not, again, the lake is still very deep, but it is filling in the beach. You go to the beaches there, and it's not miles, but it's yards, about 100 yards of very, very shallow beaches, and then it plummets. But this is all the sediment that has been filling in and coming in from the ground being disturbed by them building as much as they can, but it's very limited there. So anytime you have a situation like that where housing is limited, it's a desirable location, just like Hawaii. You have people come in, it's a very, very popular destination for second homes, vacation homes. And people will buy homes, and they usually aren't there throughout the year. But you have people, it's very seasonal, it's very busy in the wintertime, much less so in the off season, which is, the summer. But there's still plenty of things that happen. And so you have people that work there, but the locals are struggling to survive. If you don't own a home in Lake Tahoe, which is extremely expensive, you have to live in the outlying regions and travel in, and it creates makes things harder on the locals. So they're trying to pass a ballot initiative to tax empty homes, to raise more money for the locals, and for services, and this is up to 6,000 homes left vacant for more than 6 months a year. And so, do most people live in Tahoe? They have second homes? No, because that's not where they work. It's again, it's a vacation spot, and they vacation there so many months out of the year, and they don't live there, and so they know this. So you really have locals. The very few rental housing available for local workers, and what's available for rent is expensive. You have the Tahoe Chamber of Commerce and real estate agents that thrive on second homes. They thrive on this tourism industry, and that is a big part of the local economy there. So they're fighting this. So really you have the locals fighting the Chamber of Commerce and real estate agents saying, look, you're attacking one of the things, the main forms of commerce here in South Lake Tahoe. But again, the schools are closing. You have fewer people can afford to live in Tahoe as it's getting priced out. So, other liberal areas, San Francisco, Oakland, have passed vacancy taxes in some form. Whether or not this is a good idea, I don't know. It might make sense for a place like South Lake Tahoe. I would say same thing as Hawaii cutting taxes. Let them try it. See what happens. It looks like the vast majority of the public is for this, the people that actually live there and work there. and it probably will get passed. So if it does, let's see what happens, and we can tell if this is a good idea, bad idea. It's the first time that it's being passed in a tourist area like South Lake Tahoe, where there are a lot of vacation homes. So um, it'll be interesting to see what happens. So I'm actually going to skip this next article because we have so much to get to. I'm going to skip the next two articles and get to, this is a related article to the main topic, and this is from Cal Matters. It's a nonprofit, nonpartisan state news, but it's talking about here in California. Well, this is all focused on California. It ties directly into ACA costs. So in California, 2012 to 2019, 19 hospitals have closed their labor and delivery services. 6 hospitals have closed completely. And it comes out with a bunch of bad news at first, and then it tries to explain why. 16 more closed, additional ones closed from 2020 to 2022, closed their maternity wards. So begs the question, why are so many hospitals either closing down or closing their maternity wards? 23, 11 more have announced maternity ward closures, including one that the whole hospital closed down. Then it's interesting how they did this, where you go through these highlights and then you actually get to the article. There's only in this huge county. It's sparsely populated though, because most of this is desert. But you do have some farm workers out here, but there's not a high population out here in the Imperial County. It's just, as you can see, it's huge, and most of it is desert. And you'll have some farming out there, but that's really about it. So only 2 hospitals. One is closing, only leaving one. El Centro has closed its maternity ward, leaving just 1 hospital in this huge region to handle, for births. So this is the whole point of the article: is hospitals close labor wards large stretches of California without maternity care, which is a concern. And they're saying it only leaves 1 hospital to deliver 2,500 babies born every year. So again, the locals, I'm not going to focus too much on the local issues here. I want to focus on the larger issues here. And the way they present it, they talk about all the closures. There are some hospitals that have opened too, that they mention further down in the article. But overall, you have hospital closing. It's a net loss of hospitals, and especially maternity wards, labor and maternity wards. And so pregnancy-related deaths reached a 10-year high in 2020. That's a little bit dated. And the question here is why? Why is it harder and harder to get to a labor maternity ward? Why are they closing? So total number of hospitals delivering babies. This is a better number because it looks at the total number. Went from 250 in 2012 to 214 today. Now, has California's population gone up or down? It's gone up. So it would be natural to assume that we would need more hospitals. Why do we have hospitals closing? So it talks about, sometimes it's public, sometimes it's done quietly. Every single time a hospital changes the services that they offer, they have to report it to the state. They're required to notify the Department of Public Health when they reduce or eliminate services. So it all needs to be reported. And so the question is why? There's a myriad number of reasons. High costs, inflation is happening, increased labor shortages. So when we talk about high costs, California was about to pass a $25 minimum wage for healthcare professionals, anybody working in healthcare. And they reversed course because the state couldn't afford it, but they're about to pass on this huge cost to hospitals too. And you wonder why hospitals are closing. But here's a big issue: declining birth rates. So this is a stark thing. So you have more people in California than ever, but you have, in the past 30 years, the number of births has dropped by half. And so that's a trend nationally, that our birth rate has dropped to concerning levels, where we're looking more like Europe and Japan, where we can't replace our population. That's one of the reasons why our borders are wide open, and for cheap labor, if we don't have as many people being born, it would force wages up. But if you, again, that's a whole nother issue here. But the labor, the maternity rate is lower than ever across the country. Not as bad as Europe there, but getting there. But as a result, there's just fewer births, so labor and delivery units aren't being used as much, and they're expensive to run, like anything in a hospital. So if they're not being used, they're closing them down. But the problem here, and this is a problem, it's here they say that having a baby, delivering a baby, is not a luxury; it's a necessity. But the problem is you have to look at economic realities. Limited choices for maternity care, and it has, they highlight that as a disproportionate impact on California's low-income and Latino populations, because they're out in farming communities. They're out where there's not a high population generally, and it is concerning, because we want to make sure that there's care for everybody, but at the same time, it has to make economic sense. We can't just throw money out there and force hospitals to stay open when they're losing money. So there's a cost to everything that we're doing. This isn't just happening in California, but they go through the numbers here and how it is affecting a lot of immigrants, affecting a lot of poor. It's not a good thing to see hospitals closing, and especially maternity wards closing. But the economic reality is, if you don't have the number of births, if you have half the births that you did 30 years ago, it's not economically feasible to keep these hospitals open. And especially with rising costs as well, it just makes sense why they're closing. Now, I want to kind of go into a related matter. So this actually was a tangential article. The main article I want to talk about is getting covered through the exchanges. So the same source, Cal Matters, had another article about getting covered through Covered California. Now, what is Covered California? If you don't live in California, why would you know? It's their state exchange. So pretty much most states have a state exchange where if you can't afford, and this is all based on the ACA law or Obamacare, if you can't afford normal health insurance, you can go to the state and get covered and get subsidies to pay for your health care. Now, this leads directly into the topic of the day: healthcare subsidies. And this is the whole point of this article. I saw this, I'm like, look, I have to talk about this. It's a real thing. We're already in June. So this is a great time to pay attention to this and make some adjustments. Why do you have to be aware of this tax peril? Because when you go in and you get quoted, you are not paying the full amount. They normally don't even tell you the full amount of how much it actually costs for your health care. And that's the point of Obamacare, that it's to make health care accessible to everybody. But by doing so, we've increased costs across the board, and so it's priced most people out of private health insurance. So if you don't get health insurance through your work, Either you have to pay for it privately or you have to go through some different alternatives to provide for health insurance. And those mainly involve cost sharing plans, and they can get very, very expensive, especially if you have um, catastrophic health issues that occur. So here, the tax peril talks about is thousands of Californians, and this applies to Arizonans, people in New York, wherever you are. If you're using your state exchange, this hits you. And they focus on California here because it's California news source, but this is true all across the country. So if you go in and they quote you, they tell you, look, $200 for health insurance, and you're like, yes, that's great, I can pay that. The true cost is probably closer to $1,000 to $1,500. So the unsubsidized amount is probably, let's just for ease of numbers here, let's say it's $1,000 a month. But based on your income, due to the ACA laws and Obamacare, you only have to pay $200 a month if that's what you qualify. But the state taxpayers are paying that other $800 a month. So you go in, you get health care, you only pay $200 a month, but let's say your income changes in the year. This is the biggest issue. I've seen this hit so many people, and it can really sting. So at the end of the year, if your income went up, and just for ease, let's say it went up to where you were supposed to be paying $500 a month of the $1,000, so you're still getting a subsidy of $500, but you were paying $200 and you didn't pay $300. If that happened for most of the year, that's $3,600 you'll have to repay on your subsidy. That's $300 a month times 12, that's $3,600. So either you end up owing that money to the IRS or they take it out of your refund. This is a big reason why a lot of people are getting much smaller refunds. So again, talking about California, 415,000 households owe $690 million in 2021. So that's about $1,600 per person or family. Most of these people are in lower income households. So as a result of how this law is set up, people are getting hammered, mostly in lower income homes. So you have to repay it, and it goes through your taxes. It's all part of the Affordable Care Act, and it's run by each state has its own marketplace, state insurance marketplace if they have one. But at the same time, it's the federal government that collects any excess aid or subsidies when you file your tax returns. This is called a process called reconciliation. So again, you need to watch out for this. I've seen so many people burned by this, people that came in, didn't consider all of their income, didn't realize that they had to report everything, even income that's not taxable. So VA disability, Social Security, any kind of income needs to be reported when you go in and do this. So and there's a lot of bad information out there, which is why people are getting burned. We see this happen way too often, and so this is why we're trying to inform and educate people on this issue so you can avoid this tax issue. So we're going to dive more into this and how to prevent it when we come back after this break. And that'll be just in a few minutes. So stay tuned and we'll wrap this up for you. Welcome back, everybody. So, interesting article here again about how this works, how it affects people all across the country. But I want to focus on some terminology here. So, this is all about the premium tax credit that people receive. This is the subsidy that people received based on your income and your ability to pay for health insurance. So every single year you're supposed to file a form, and we'll touch on that form shortly. And this reconciles what your income actually was with what was reported at the beginning of the year, because your enrollment is in November, December of the previous year. And you have to estimate what your income is going to be for the next year. And that's the problem, is that you're estimating moving forward, and then they give you a credit based on your estimate. So again, the charges often come as a shock. As a rule, you think you're following the rule. People feel like they're following the rules of getting healthcare coverage through the exchanges, like the government wants them to, and they still get smacked with the cost. So there's going to be some key things here that we're going to talk about, but I'm going to move to the next article here. I mean, you can save money, but watch out for this tax bill, which is pretty nasty. And so this next article I want to talk about is all about how do you avoid this tax? How do you avoid, if your income was higher last year, if your income last year was higher than expected, do you have to pay back what is called as advanced premium tax credits? So that's the term for your tax returns. That's what the subsidies are called, advanced premium tax credits for marketplace coverage. So the marketplace being the exchanges, the healthcare exchanges that the states have set up. And this really goes into, answers a lot of questions. What is APCT? And, so they have all the questions, and you click on it and it just takes it to you. So what is that? It's when you got more credits, also called premium subsidies, so subsidies for health insurance, than you were entitled to. So this is why it's so important to look at all sources of income when you go and apply for healthcare under the exchanges, under ACA. You have to share everything, because if anything isn't reported, people are getting hit with tens of thousands of dollars sometimes in these penalties that need to be repaid. They don't go away, and the IRS is collecting on them. However, if it's just ACA penalties, they can't garnish your wages. They can't go after your bank accounts. But what normally happens is this balance sits there. They can file a lien on them, but you can't get a refund. You're going to owe money every single year, and yes, it accrues interest until these premiums are paid back, either by refunds or you actually pay money in by setting up an installment agreement. So it's making a lot of people owe money, even though they receive the benefit of healthcare coverage. And I say benefit because a lot of people that I've talked to, they never used it. They signed up for it. They were told you need to do this. It's a great program, and it can be a great program for many people. But if you're not careful, it can hurt you. It can hurt you in a lot of ways. So be mindful of that. So what they're talking about is excess APTC. So to try to put this in English, these are just subsidies, government subsidies for healthcare. What if you get too many subsidies based on your income? So what typically happens, either income isn't reported, someone has a rental or something like that, they have some other kind of asset or flow of income that's not reported, not considered, or what's more common is they get, and all this depends on your household income, what you qualify for originally, and this goes into it. When your income changes, when your income changes throughout the year, this is how, and again, it's covered in both articles, but if your income goes up, this is how you need to report it. So here, if you overestimated your, the whole article here is about paying back and do you have to pay it back. So when your income goes up throughout the year, then you have to go and change it. You have to make that adjustment with the exchange. Is it easy to do? No, it's not. So that's the last thing I'm going to share is how do you actually make those adjustments. But people get hit with it when their income goes up. They get an inheritance, they cash out some stock, you take money out of a 401k, you get anything that increases your income, even if you use that money for health insurance, if you have to pay for a surgery, something serious happens where you need a chunk of money, if your income goes up on your tax return, then you can lose a lot of these subsidies. And not only do you, especially people that take out money for an emergency, they deal with the emergency and then they have to deal with the taxes from early withdrawal. But then if their subsidies, if their income goes up, then they have to pay more in Obamacare subsidies, and it's a look back period. So that when you file your next tax return, they'll look back at the previous year. So right now, people are filing their 23 tax returns. If you filed your 23 tax return and your income was higher for 2023 than what you estimated, and when the enrollment period is November, December of 2022. So if you didn't estimate your income was going to be high enough, and for 2023 you had higher income and you got more subsidies than you were entitled to, when you file your tax return in 24, that's when you have to pay all those subsidies back. So this is why the time lag here is what really kills people. It was set up in such a funky way that people warned about this, that it would hurt people and surprise people. And that's exactly what's happening. So I'm going to post this, go through these questions, ask a lot of these questions. Now, you don't have to pay the full amount. It depends on what your household income is. And this is a IRS term. They love acronyms, MAGI. So and this is on your tax return. And this is AGI. I'm not sure where the M is from. If it's higher than 400% of the previous year's federal poverty level, you have to repay all of the excess APTC. But if your income is higher but not over 400%, they cap how much you have to pay. So right here it talks about the different caps. If you're less than 200% of the poverty level, it's capped at $350, $700 for joint filers, but 200 to 300%, 900 to 1800. If you're between 300 and 400%, it's capped at $1,500 to $3,000. So, and if you click on what was the federal poverty level here, it goes by household size. For one person, $1,359. It's fairly low. So if one person at $1,359, if you were making $50,000, then you're definitely at 400%. 54,360. The chart goes on. So again, they do have the links in there. You can see what the federal poverty level and where you fall on that, and what these caps are. So, trying to cover a little bit too much information. I'm going to jump more to the end because this is where it talks about how do you figure this out. How many people have to repay it? How do you do this? If you switch to employer-sponsored insurance, there's plenty of ways that you have to recalculate. So the tax form, I believe, is 8963. So how do you avoid paying it? You have to update your information with the IRS. Well, not the IRS. We have to go to the exchanges, and make sure that your credit, the APTC, your credit, is recalculated. So, number one, project your income as accurately as possible, but you're looking at the whole next year, and you won't actually have your tax return done until April 15th of the next year. So it's really hard to, life happens, stuff happens, changes happen. But if you realize your household income is going to be higher or lower, you can modify your income projection in your marketplace to reduce your subsidy amount for the rest of the year. And I've had people call and say, look, so-and-so signed me up and I called and I called and I called and I can't go through. How do you fix that? You can also choose to not get the full subsidy. Most people don't understand that. Most people say, hey, you call, someone signed you up and they're selling you, sign up and you're only going to pay $300 a month. Or you're only going to do this, you're only going to pay so how much a month. You don't have to take the full subsidy. You can pay more. And people would ask, why in the world would I pay more for health insurance? Because at the end of the year, you can recalculate it. If you overestimated your income, so if your income went down, when you file your tax returns at the end of the year, you can actually get money back from premiums you overpaid. So if you switch here, you can recalculate, get back the premiums that you've overpaid. And here's the problem, that to recalculate it at the end of the year, which almost nobody does, they're saying about 2.6 million returns included excess tax credits. So this is about $14.64 per return, but people aren't getting this because you have to recalculate and apply for it. So here's the form 8962. Don't remember if I had that right. But you have to file this form if you have to report health insurance. California is trying to bring back a penalty for not having health insurance. But again, this is to recalculate your subsidy. If you got too much in the subsidy, you have to pay it back. If you didn't get enough, if you were eligible for more of a subsidy, that can increase your refund or eliminate any other taxes owed. So, and then if you don't reconcile, originally it was if you didn't do it for 1 year prior, then you lose out. You can't get the subsidy the next year. They want you to do it every single year. Currently, it's for 2 consecutive years that you can't get the subsidy if you don't file this form 8962 for 2 consecutive years. So, as of 2022, can't file any e-filed returns that were missing this form if you got any premium tax credits. So it's making it harder to do this. Make sure that if you get any premium tax credits or subsidies for health insurance, that you're reporting that, and that's being taken care of. I'm going to jump to this last article real quick because this tells you how to report life changes when you have marketplace coverage. Now, is this easy? No. But the best way, if you can figure it out, if you can get online, when to report a life change? As soon as it happens. The sooner you report it, if you get a subsidy, if you get a chunk of money you weren't expecting, if your income goes up throughout the year, you go to the exchanges and report it, and that's going to help avoid some of these major surprises at the end of the year. If you have a healthcare.gov account, you can log to your marketplace and make that change yourself. It can be easier said than done, but I absolutely recommend doing it yourself if you can. If you can figure that out, you can get some help, from family members, etc. The customer support service, from what I'm hearing, is not excellent, so it is hard to do. You can also call it in to report your changes. Problem is, I've had plenty of people that have reported, people hiring us and talking about how difficult it's been, that they report changes and it doesn't actually get changed to their account. So if you can use the healthcare.gov account, log in, report the changes, and make sure they actually get updated That's the best way to make sure that you're not going to get hit by these surprises when you file your tax returns a year in the future, or for the by April 15th of next year, or if you file an extension, October of the next year. So this is why so many people get surprised by this, get hurt by this, and so be aware of this. If you have questions, give us a call, 520-485-7371. We'd much rather people avoid these penalties, avoid these issues, than get surprised by them, and it is surprising a lot of people. So again, if you have questions, get some help. Get on to healthcare.gov, make any adjustments you need. But if you're not sure, ask, because this is a growing problem and it's still affecting many, many people. And it's changed and it's morphed over the years. So again, protect yourself, protect your family, and if you're entitled to those subsidies, get them. There's no reason not to. So have a great day, and we will talk to you tomorrow.